Hey everybody, thanks for coming back. I'm just doing a brief face-to-face here because I'm here to tell you that if you have a collecting hobby such as replica helmets, you may want to have some sort of artistic background or fabricating skill or painting skill of some kind, because you'll need it at some point. All right, so I get my. This is just a brief update. I'm going too long on this, but I just needed to talk it out because it was traumatic. Um, I just recently picked up the eFX limited edition Vader over the weekend, and I had a video that you just may have seen over the weekend that I put out, and I was finishing up with some measurements I was taking of it, and had it down side by side with my PCR to compare them, and taking some snapshots of that, and being very careful with the helmet as I normally would be. Very gentle, very slowly moving, didn't drop it on things, didn't set it down on willingly or at least knowingly on hard surfaces. And I had set it back on its stand down here in the other room where I was doing some work with it as far as taking measurements. And I had left it there, and I was out for the evening, and then I came home and went to just get it and pick it back up to bring it in here, and going to put it back up on its stand when I noticed right here on the bridge of his nose, on the black part of his nose, was a white flake. It looked, I don't know if it was, I didn't know at first if it was a surface area glitch or not glitch, but just like a piece of dust or whatever. But after feeling and looking at it, it was indeed a chip of the black paint had come off and revealed the white primer underneath. Needless to say, every expletive in the world came out of my mouth. Here we are, 10:30 at night, and kind of tired, and seeing this, and then it's on my mind now, and my mind is racing, and a lot of it is, when did I do this? How did this happen? And gee, blah, 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 I'm going to have to fix this thing now. And how am I going to go about fixing it? That was the main thing. I mean, right away I knew what I had to do, but I was just trying to find any short way out of it because I just didn't want to have to mess with this thing within days after I got it, and now all of a sudden I have to do restorative paintwork on it. But that's what I was faced with. So I was left with it. I had a few choices I was thinking about. I could have either just taken a Sharpie and just dotted it in, but that's a third grade solution, and it would just show up. You'd see it no matter what you did. So I didn't even bother trying that first. The other option was to see if I could fill it in, with some real paint. And I do have in my other room where I was doing all these other projects of helmet projects, which I'm finished with, thankfully, but I still had a few things left over that I didn't put away yet because there are one or two non-Star Wars projects that I'm still kind of hanging in the background. Easy. So, I knew I needed to get some black on there and see what we could do. I didn't have any spray paint handy. I was out of that as far as black. But I didn't know if there's anything that I could have done in the evening. So, went over and got my Tamiya semi-gloss black little paint bottle, a hand paint bottle, just to see what I could do. Now, I wasn't about to try and paint this thing. I keep pointing over here because he's over here, and I'm going to show you in a second. I wasn't about to paint this thing with hand paint when the rest of the paint job on this limited edition was a nice, clean spray painted job, and to have this hand-fisted, hand-brushed glob of paint on the wherever I was going to have to put it would have looked horrible. I mean, doing it to the PCR version as I did, showing you those paint upgrades, perfectly fine, because that's the motif of the whole real screen helmet, is very hand painted. But this limited edition is, for me, is the high end pinnacle Vader replica that I'm ever going to have, as far as A New Hope is concerned. A collectible, or official authorized collectible. So I wanted to have it in some level of pristine order, right? I didn't want to just leave it sitting around with a nick on its nose. So went over and kind of took I had a 1000 grit sandpaper, which I just kind of wet sanded a little bit of the edge and down a little bit, and then got dried it off, and got a little bit of the paint in there, and let it, and kind of painted it smooth, not painting around the surface area, just painting in the flake area, and just let the paint sit there and let it kind of work its way into the cracks of the flake a little bit, and see how that looked. Well, it looked like a black pimple. It was bad. So I waited for that to dry. Then I was reminded of one of the other Vader projects I was doing, and I had been working with a local body shop friend of mine on that, because I just didn't have the facilities at the time. I still kind of don't, but at the time I needed to get something done quick and didn't have time to fool around with trying to do everything the way I would have to do it, to do a whole Vader paint, in black up, and then everything else. That's a lot of paint. So anyway, I was dealing with this body shop, and they were telling me how they're going to do it, and they paint the whole thing black first, and then sand it down smooth, and while it's sanded, then they put the next layer of whatever they're putting on, like the gloss. Well, they put it on, and I asked, why would you do that without it having a good color to it, without a good shiny finish? And they said that's not it. There are a few reasons. Number one, you don't have to, but number two, when you sand the black surface down smooth, it and leaving the sanding there, it does provide, on a microscopic level, I suppose, more of a grip or foothold for the whatever you're putting on top of it to stay on. So in this case, the clear coat. Plus the clear coat, when you put it on, the color is still there. It's just sanded out, but the color is still there. So the clear coat fills all that in, and then brings the color back up. And they were kidding. That was the deepest, richest, black, shiny paint I've seen, other than like auto body stuff, which is what they used it for. So I figured I would take that advice and try and do it on that. So sanded him down, got him good and wet sanded, very smooth, and everything surrounding area very smooth. Sanded the whole top of the eye socket, surface under his eye socket, smooth, and then taped his whole area, the whole eyepiece open, and then taped everything else off. Did a Vader tape paint job, which is a pain in the butt. Anyway, so now we're pushing midnight, 12:30, and long day and being tired. So yesterday, not now, although it's probably about that time now, whatever. But adding to the level of frustration at that time, I was contemplating whether or not I should crack open the Bustillo and keep going, but didn't have to, thankfully. So took it down to my basement, to my booth. I hit it with some gloss coat, very nicely smooth, even gloss coat. I was very happy with it. Brought it back upstairs to let it dry, so I could monitor it and just make sure nothing's going on with it. Let it dry overnight, and then the next morning, well, in this case, this morning, woke up, and because you don't want to touch any kind of clear coat, especially a gloss, anywhere within a few hours before. Give it a good next day before you start playing with it. Fingerprints and smudges can still show up. It can still be sticky. Anyway, so yeah, go to check it out, and it looks really good. It's a bit shinier than the other black parts of the face, just a bit. So I still was okay with the possibility of maybe having to take a very high grit sandpaper, or like a polishing cloth of something that would not leave sand marks, but just would kind of buff it down a bit, just to get that little bit of gloss off the surface and bring it down to more of a satin finish that the rest of the black pieces seem to have. It was fine if I had to do that, but didn't have to go that well. Didn't go that direction. I had to go farther, but not that direction. So as I was inspecting the paint area, or the gloss area where I had the tape lines, and make sure that everything was right on the seams and I didn't leave any spillover or where I didn't need it or whatever. And I was using my flashlight to inspect the surface area that way, so you can really get a good clean. Everything's looking great up until I get to the spot, and it was looking like you found a ship under the water as soon as I was coming over and hit it, because it was just, number one, that the blemish was still there, but number two, the color wasn't the exact same color as the surrounding paint, even though the black that they use is a semi-gloss black. It was a different brand, different manufacturer, there, different quality of the color of the paint. Who knows what it is, but it just didn't quite match, and it was just very obvious. Now I turn the light off, and the blemish goes away. And so when you're in a controlled lighting environment, not like this. If it's darker, then this is pretty bright in here. I've got all of my picture taking lights on, so it's pretty bright. When I tested it with that, I turned the flashlight on, turned these all on, and looked at it, and boom, it was just sticking straight out at me. Now, a general person may or may not know or care if that was there, but my OCD is just what it is, and so I just I couldn't leave it be. I couldn't leave it alone. I just had to wrestle with the reality that because I didn't want to alter the stock paint job on this piece. I wanted this piece to be as much intact as is for its own sake. I didn't want to have to go around and always screw with it and get non-factory paint on it, but you're faced with it. You either just leave that little white or black colored zit on this nose forever, or you try and fix it. So I just opted to fix it because, what are you going to do? So went back and taped her back up and really taped up everything. Got a bag over the head this time, and everything's sealed up nice and good, and the tape job lines all nice and sharp where they're at. And from working from home, there's some advantages to having some extra time to do things like this. So burned my lunch break going downstairs and hitting some. I'm going too far on myself. I had to go on my lunch break to the local hobby shop, get a can of Tamiya semi-gloss black, and just got a few other things when I was there. A better tape, a nice new sharp X-Acto knife, some acrylic thinner, and what else did I get? I think that was it. And they were only 5 minutes up the road, so I think that was easy. rushed back home. All right, did all that, got it taped up, and that's what the X-Acto was for, to help. Nice pinstripe, removal of tape around certain corners and whatever. Took it downstairs. Again, very controlled, very steady and easily and evenly, I should say, flow of paint. Just a few tosses back and forth. Didn't get too crazy with it because I didn't really need to get anywhere else too much other than where this was. But I didn't want to be too, I want to be too much. You have to keep it even the whole way through. I didn't want to have a nice looking application here and then have some spottling or some speckling looking back here because I wasn't hitting enough. So just had to go over it and make sure everything was nice and nice and smooth. And thankfully, I have a light or a window rather down there where my paint area is in my basement, and so I was able to get a good natural light reference on how it looked instead of just using the fix this a little bit. Instead of just using the incandescent light that was down there. And it looked pretty good. I was happy with what I was looking at, but the paint, having recently been applied, still was a little wet and a little more shiny and glossy looking than the other existing black surface area. So I figured let's just give it a couple hours to really just settle in and see if that brings it down to where it needs to be. So brought it back upstairs, had a little space on my table out there, just let it air dry up here where I can see it, make sure nothing's happening to it. And before I untaped anything, I did a thorough inspection with the flashlight, everything, and it turned out perfectly, thank God. So, crisis averted, everything looks perfect, it matches the shininess of the other parts of the face. But it was frustrating that I didn't have this thing a week after a number of years of wanting one, and finally getting one at just an amazing price and a stroke of luck, as if I was meant to have it. And then this stupid stuff happens. So, if I shoulda, coulda, wouldas, right? Vision's 2020, hindsight, and whatever. I mean, if I would have taken a little more time being careful with handling it, sure, this wouldn't have happened. But I was as careful as I thought I could be, but yet it still happened. So what would you do, right? I mean, if you were in a position where you didn't quite, thankfully I had gone through a number of paint jobs that I've had to do over the last couple of years now, where I've had to kind of break out and develop some of these painting techniques to really kind of get them in. You can't, it's not a matter of just, I know it sounds easy to say, well, I just painted over it and I sanded it. Yes, but there's a feel to it that you develop that anybody who's done things like this would get. Thankfully, having an art background and a photography background in school and college helped. But still, if I didn't have that and this happened, what are you doing? You either take the third grader way out and poke it with a Sharpie marker and just deal with it and be done with it. Or you just leave it there with a white speck for the rest of its life and just say, character mark. Or you take it to somebody who knows what they're doing and pay them money to do it. And hopefully probably get a good job from it and everything be fixed. But you got downtime and extra money spent. So, I guess, again, just getting around to my point is, if you're going to be a collector and have collections and things, get to know the craft of which these collections are made from, so that when things happen, you can handle them as best you can. Sometimes things happen where you got to send it back to the manufacturer if something breaks off and it's just not staying on. You can't get a good, clean reaffix or something, or whatever. But in general, I mean, any of the normal everyday, bumps and things that scuff some paint, and you can't just dot it in. You have to hit the whole area, or else it just looks spotted, and you don't want that if you want something to have a nice, clean, complete look. It's different on the PCR version. If I would have bumped that, because that one's painted up to be messy and dirty and used looking as the film, that would have been a much easier solution if something like that would have happened. But having this one to bring it back to where it sits as the pinnacle of at least my New Hope Vader representation, you have to take it that way. So anyway, that's I guess my little advice segment is get to know your art craft of your collection so that you can be the handyman if it needs to happen, and not freak out about it at 10:30 at night, and keep yourself up forever. So let me switch this around and take a little view of the finished result, and then let you guys get out of here. So let me swap you around here. All right, there's my hallway. Nothing interesting there. Move on. Okay, so here we go. So here it is. Now I'm kind of sitting in front of it, and I don't know if you can tell, but I'm going to get over here, and I'm going to actually turn you into. There you go. That's much better. So this is the area I had to repaint everything, and the nose bridge here. And I don't know if it's going to turn out on here if you can see it, but right there is where the defect was. So if you really, really look, it may still have some surface there, but it's just pretty much been absorbed. And the paint job was successfully applied. And I don't know if I can't remember if I mentioned this, but I actually had to go and sand off the surface layer of the gloss that I put on before. So I had to wet sand that down as well, because it had some orange peeling going on when I really looked at it. But yeah, it turned out very satisfactory. It's a nice, smooth. I don't know if the autofocus is doing what we want, but it's a nice, smooth, uninterrupted paint, and the color actually matched properly. The Tamiya semi-gloss really, really worked well with the rest of it. So let's kind of turn you around here. See if I can get a little bit in front. I don't know, the light, well, every time I back up, the lighting kind of gets goofy. Well, let's just maybe do it this way. I don't know. How's that? Is that making you dizzy? Yeah. Let's go over here. I don't know what's causing that. Hang on a second. Let's try this. Let's get this up here. Yeah, it's a little better. I don't know what's going on. What if I take this? Oh, look at that. I was getting this yellow incandescent overflow. Well, that's a little better. So if I turn him into the light. Okay. So from here, you can see as the face kind of, the two tones starting to do its job by making it hard to discern what's black and what's gunmetal. And yeah, you can tell everything looks pretty good. So she's back to operational status, and I'm quite happy with it. And there, oh, and by the way, it's on a custom stand that I made for my Vaders. Which is I had to have some kind of sturdy base to hold these heavy things. And there's a big 2-inch round PVC pipe that's covered in black felt that's permanently screwed in and glued into the base and the inside of this. It goes all the way up and it has a 4-inch disc at the top with some felt material on it to keep it from sliding around. Pretty cool stand. It works. That's not what I'm using now for this. I just had it down here to put it on for display for being down here. It's going to go back up there when we're done and maintain looking over the valley, as it were. So, all right. Well, thanks for sticking with me on that. And like and subscribe. Always keep it civil and have a good evening.